Switch this up. Okay, we are live. Welcome back to another episode, one day late. We normally do this on a Wednesday each week, but scheduling conflicts pushed this off a day. So welcome, Matt Ladner. Good to have you here today.
Good to see you.
We are going to follow the same format. So we've got an appetizer, a main dish, and then a dessert for you today. And so we're just going to jump right into it here. The appetizer is twofold. So I want to talk about grade inflation in higher ed. We can talk about grade inflation in K-12 too briefly if we want, which is a pervasive problem, both in K-12 and in higher ed. And then I want to talk about alternatives, an interesting program that I saw in Fortune magazine, talked about in Fortune. So first things first here, we've got a graph out of the Wall Street Journal. This is an article that came out a few days ago talking about Harvard College, an internal report that they released that shows the percentage of A grades in 2006 versus today. You can see that's a nice steep slope there. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Look at, the trend is what it is. That's obvious. But it's interesting, 20 to 21, that year, some interesting things happened. It was almost a step function in that year.
Yeah.
But regardless, then if you look at the GPA, the median GPA at graduation, that's just crazy that because of the scale, right? So you've got over 40 years, you've gone from 3.25 to over 3.75. You know, you're probably, I think it's 3.82 is what the article said, is the average GPA for a graduate of Harvard. So they interviewed several folks for the article. One of them was Steven Pinker, a noted psychologist who teaches and has taught at Harvard for many, many years. And it says here, Pinker has given a similar final exam since 2003, and students score 10 percentage points lower today than they did back then when he first started on the multiple choice portion. There's some variation. He allows for some possible explanations for that. But then he says, everyone has an incentive to keep inflating grades unless everyone stops simultaneously. So I want to talk about just briefly, Matt, what are your thoughts on how professors are disincentivized to provide a rigorous course for students?
I think it's a pervasive problem. In fact, years ago, there was a book written called Academically Adrift. And if I remember, the one of the main findings of this book was that in universities and colleges, they'd given, a number of them had given sort of a broad test of cognitive skills to freshmen, and then give it to a group of seniors, the appropriate number of years later.
Mm-hmm.
And on large numbers of institutions, there was no evidence of progress. There have been other studies that show the amount of like work outside of classroom work has been going down for a long time.
Yeah.
It's I would be very concerned about this if I were in higher ed, because the main function of the universities, and it's a sort of a cynical take, is that it's sort of a signaling function,
right?
Where you're signaling to people that you can keep a schedule and, navigate a complex bureaucracy, and that you have a certain amount of determination, that sort of thing. And great inflation is going to degrade the value of that signal pretty badly, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and I think that it is a cynical view, but I think it's also it's a realistic take on what a university degree means. I mean, there is some value in looking at it, and some realistic practical value in looking at it and saying, okay, you can put up with a certain amount of crap. You can put up with a certain amount of demands on you intellectually, in all the different aspects that college courses and university program can impose on you. So I think there's value there, and it's realistic, and I think it's in a very practical way, it makes sense to assign value to that. But there are drawbacks to that as well. And so I'm going to switch gears here, just maybe tie a bow on this real quick. This is a pervasive problem, like you said, and an ongoing, a very long-term problem. I saw this, the end of this article says, the author says, in any case, this is in the Wall Street Journal, in any case, the debate has been raging for years. In 1894, less than a decade after the grading system was put into place, a standards committee at Harvard said that A's and B's were sometimes given too readily. So 1894, I thought that was funny.
That is funny.
So switching gears here really quickly over to this, the alternative. I read an article in Fortune magazine while I was preparing for this, that Alex Karp, the CEO, has been, and so is of Palantir, the CEO of Palantir, and the founder of Palantir, Peter Thiel, have both been very, very critical of higher education and the university and college system in America and in the West broadly for years now. And so we've heard them come up with or suggest alternatives. Maybe someone could do this, someone could do that. Peter Thiel famously several years ago paid a certain number of college or potential college students to quit or to not enroll and to come and do something different instead, to pursue if I remember right, it was to pursue an invention that they had come up with. So they applied and said, look, I have this idea and I want to pursue it. And he said, okay, I'll pay for you to pursue it if you don't go to college, if you promise not to go to college.
Right.
And so that happened. Well, this is the latest in along that same vein in this alternative to university or college. So what they did is they came up with what they're calling the Meritocracy Fellowship, which launched in April of this year. 4 months long. They had 500 applicants. These have to be high school graduates, but not enrolled in a college. These are the prerequisites. So they have 500 applicants. Only 22 kids made the cut, and they go to work for simultaneously. So they're learning, and they're taking courses. This is interesting. They're taking courses not just in the kinds of things that Palantir does as an organization, and they do a variety of things. They have interests in defense and software, data analytics, things like that. So they're not just getting work experience or learning about those types of things, but it says here that they also learned about U.S. history and foundations of the West, which I think is fantastic. Another part of the article shows a quote from Alex Karp, the CEO, where he says that the tagline for the program included the phrase "skip the indoctrination." So I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. I hope that more organizations do something like this. We're already seeing, micro credentialing and things like that. That high school graduates can go off and get credentials in certain specific areas. Like, for instance, Adobe has a credentialing program, the company Adobe, where you can go and get credentialed in Photoshop or InDesign for a graphic design, type career if you wanted to pursue that. So, anyway, interesting.
What's most surprising to me about this story, Matt, is that there was only 500 applications.
Seriously, they need some marketing help, because I guarantee that would be over 50,000 if they were doing this right.
I think so.
Pretty awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna pull that down and let's move into our main dish. Matt, turn it over to you.
Okay. So I thought a good main dish for today would be about the 74. Linda Jacobson has an article up called "In Sprawling Los Angeles, School Choice Faces Its Own Kind of Gridlock." Right. And this is something I'm actually writing about right now, in the nexus between school choice and student transportation. And there's a national problem that the traditional yellow bus system, well, first of all, it's always been a very limited use to kids going to schools other than their zone district school, right? The yellow bus system is, with some exceptions, mostly designed to move kids around within attendance boundaries.
Right.
Now, there are districts that do more than that. Here in Arizona, our school districts can go 30 miles outside their boundary, and some of them do, but most of them are still doing their Jurassic routes from 1993, right?
Right.
And then nationally, there's this huge problem because it's typically required. I think it's required. It might be a combination of federal and state requirements. I'm not sure, but it is required for you to have a commercial driver's license to drive a school bus. And what's happened over the last decade is that the career opportunities available to people with commercial CDLs, they're called. The career opportunities have increased a lot, right? We get a lot more stuff delivered to our homes now than we did a decade ago, right? Amazon, Instacart, all this sort of thing, DoorDash, whatever. I mean, I guess most people in DoorDash are using personal vehicles, but in any case, districts have been increasingly struggling to hire enough people with commercial driver's licenses to even, to maintain their routes. This really hit during COVID because most of the people that were still in the district driving pools were sort of, there were a lot of retirees, people that didn't want to work full time and whatnot. And then when the reopening happened, and you were asking an older workforce to, hey, do you want to get on a bus and drive it around with a bunch of kids who are throwing their masks at each other?
Right.
They were like, I think I don't need this part-time job with weird hours and low pay and no benefits, right?
Screaming kids and yeah.
So the governor of Massachusetts actually called out the National Guard to man the buses in Massachusetts, and nothing's gotten better since then. So this story in the 74 about Los Angeles is interesting to me. I think if you go to the other
one.
Yeah, it's mostly about the struggles that students trying to use school choice through magnet schools and charter schools face in Los Angeles, and it focuses on this Alfred B. Noble Charter School, which I located on a map for the viewers. And as you can see, it's way, way, way over on one side of Los Angeles, right?
Yep.
So, um, one of the themes that, that I've been developing in this paper I'm writing is that the more schools you have, the more proximity you have, the more kids can just flat out walk or bike to school.
Yep.
Okay. It used to be that a majority of students in America were walking or biking their way to school. Okay. And by 2017, that was down to 10%. Okay.
Wow.
So, which is mind blowing to people of my generation, right? We're like, wait,
Mhm.
what? You're not biking or walking to school? Huh? Right. And if you go to the next slide, Matt,
Mhm.
this is kind of a hint as to why. This is from the Stanford Educational Opportunity Project, and it's showing the rate of academic growth for public schools in Los Angeles. And that big number one circle there is Alfred B. Noble Magnet Charter School or something. This school is confusing because it's identified as both a magnet and a charter school. So I'm not sure how that works out.
Hmm.
But these schools are sized by their enrollment. Okay. And as you see, this is a big school. Okay. I looked up the enrollment, it's over 1,900 kids.
This is for highly gifted school students, right? This particular magnets.
Yeah, I think so. The academics do look favorable. It gets a 9 out of 10 on great schools,
Mhm.
and Stanford here gives it a rate of academic growth that's 13% above the national average. So
Okay.
those are both good. And the story is basically about these families struggling to get their kids there, and they carpool and ride buses. And they said that one of the dads like got a co-working space so he wouldn't have to drive as much when he was the carpool dad. And just the article kind of details how they're trying to make the bus system work better for kids, but it's a struggle. And so this got me to kind of wanting to look at the the LA area in terms of just proximity, right?
Yeah.
So Los Angeles County is the largest population county in the country. They were number one. I couldn't help but compare it to our county, which is Maricopa County in Arizona. We're ranked the fourth highest population county, but we're a distant fourth.
Okay.
We have less than half the amount of population. So Los Angeles County is about 9.5 million. We're at about 4.6. Now, of course, Los Angeles continues to slowly shrink and we continue to grow, but it's going to be a while before we may never catch them. So the basic point, Matt, is that, like, for instance, every time you open a charter school, there is a group of kids that can just flat out walk there.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
you're within a mile, or you can walk.
You can walk, right? So Los Angeles County has 369 charter schools. Okay, which may sound like a lot. Maricopa County has 399. Okay,
That's incredible, isn't it?
It is. Their 369 charter schools educate 205,000 kids, which is a lot. Our 399 schools educate 177,000. Okay.
Wow.
So on average, we have more schools and more that are smaller. Okay. And again, this goes back to how the size of that circle, right?
Yeah.
The 100, 1,900. We do have charter schools that have that kind of enrollment, but not very many, right?
Not very many.
That's huge. And it's by definition, there are kids that can walk to the Alfred B. Noble Charter School, but not very many, right? And it kind of begs the question, seeing all of this through the transportation lens, why is there only one Alfred B. Noble Charter School?
Yeah.
Right. The Jacobson's article quotes someone who says, "Yep, this is the Noble School. It's always over enrolled. It's always got a huge wait list or something to that effect."
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, in my view, it'd be way cooler if there were, I don't know, 10 Noble schools,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Maybe you could spread them out, across the Los Angeles area, right? I looked up the number of private schools in Los Angeles County. In 2021, there were 867. In 2024, it was down to 818. The number of charter schools operating in Los Angeles Unified. So it's different than there's lots of school districts in LA.
Hmm.
But the biggest one, of course, is LA Unified. In 2020, it was 279, excuse me. In 2023, it's 272. So again, it's not going in the right direction.
Right.
From a transportation standpoint, those 818 private schools could do a lot, right? Like there's lots of kids that live near those 818 private schools, but of course, state of California provides no financial assistance for people to pay for the tuition, right? So kids
Hmm.
literally walk there, right? And finally, there are over 160,000 vacant spaces in the LA Unified School District. They have, I think I saw 56 elementary schools that are operating at about 25% capacity. Okay.
Wow.
So this
25%.
25% and a much higher percentage that are around 50%. Okay. So there is a lot of vacant district space in LA Unified. The overall population of LA Unified is been steadily declining. It peaked around 2002 at over 700,000 kids, and they're down to like 408,000 or something to that effect. So a lot of factors involved there. Of course, a baby bust,
Yeah.
but also it's just expensive to live in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
People are moving out. And um, that's a trend across the country, right? Not the moving out, but the enrollment declines generally. So,
right,
and
but
it's not going away.
it's more severe than average in Los Angeles for sure. I mean, you get gentrification and a baby bust going at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, so the way I've been thinking about this, Matt, is that we need to start thinking about co-location as
Mhm.
a transportation solution, right? In New York City, the originator of the co-location concept, the students who are attending co-located charter schools are still eligible to ride the school bus, right? So there's already a transportation solution, there.
Mhm.
Now, something is going to have to be done about this CDL thing.
Right.
And the only tool in the toolbox should not be yellow buses, right? Because they mentioned in Jacobson's article that a third of LA Unified kids are using public school choice, right?
Yeah.
So, and they are trying to modernize their transportation system, but there are actually federal laws that prohibit, for instance, municipal bus systems from creating stops that are primarily designed for students and faculty.
Hmm.
I mean, this is crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know,
Makes no
and
sense.
and in a school choice world, really what you need is like a fleet of smaller vehicles going more places, right? Taking smaller groups of students to more places, right, where they need to get to.
Right.
But in addition to that, just having more schools is a huge bonus, right? I mean, just like hugely important to, and something that I've been trying to impress on people is that when you think about school choice, what really matters is like what is the immediate universe of realistic options that you can get your kid to in the morning and back
Right.
from school, right? It's like, Noble Charter School way on the other end of Los Angeles. It's no use to a lot of people,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, Noble is a standalone charter school. It's not a part of a network. It's not, so when we talk about transportation problems, we also need to think about the school supply, right? But efforts to modernize transportation are desperately needed.
Yeah.
It sounds like Los Angeles is a lot like here. We have a lower population density. We have fewer people and more land in Maricopa County than Los Angeles County, although Los Angeles County is huge onto its
Yeah.
own. So these two things are actually very deeply intertwined with each other, right? In terms of how you
Yeah.
school, how many locations do you have, and ultimately, you know, Don Seufer's group has estimated there's 95,000 micro schools in the country now.
It's incredible.
Every single one of them have kids that can walk there, right? It's not necessarily the best solution for every kid, right? But that's more than twice as many as the number of zip codes we have in the country. So, more micro schools, more charter schools, and co-location could be the winning combo to solving transportation problems. And Matt, as living here in Phoenix, when you have school age kids, you're in the car drop off, sort of purgatory, and that's a very kind term for what we actually call it, right?
I felt that punishment again this morning. Yeah.
I mean, the advocates for the traditional yellow school bus always talk about safety, right? Like, oh, the school bus is safe. Like, we wouldn't want kids going in a 15-passenger van. And the reality is that a majority of students are now getting to school in a personal vehicle, right?
That's right. Yeah.
That's why every school is piled up, in the morning and in the afternoon with a long line of cars, right? So it's just kind of absurd to keep talking about that when, people are dropping off their kid in a Mazda Miata.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and saying, yeah, that's much more safe to have them in a, in a roadster.
Yeah, totally.
much more safe. Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting problem that is going to have to find its way into legislatures at some point, because there are laws that restrict what can and can't be done when you're dealing with school-age children and transportation. But it's also one that I think the market is going to have to work through as well. There's going to, there will have to be a mixture there, and some coordination, or maybe not, maybe no coordination. In fact, better that there's no coordination, but there will have to be a market response.
And it kind of like raises an interesting question. If you've got 160,000 vacant spaces, I looked at the number of magnet schools in Los Angeles, and it's like, less than the number of charter schools.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, well, if you got magnet programs that have wait lists and like more kids want to get into them, and you got 160,000 empty seats, I don't know, maybe you should replicate those programs. Right. And nationally, the number of charter schools exceeded the number of magnet schools some years ago. Right.
Yeah.
And the reason why I believe districts don't replicate their high demand magnet programs, even though it would seem to be in their best interest to do so, right, is because the same reason they don't like charter schools or they don't like private school choice, right? Magnet programs are likely to be seen as a threat to the enrollment of the, normal
traditional district school.
Right.
Yeah. That's
so
right.
It's like they want to provide a modicum of choice in the system, but they kind of want to keep it under control.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's not what's in the public's interest at all.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Nebraska famously for years has said, we have choice. And it's like, yeah. Right. And what you mean is you have some magnet schools that are highly competitive and limited in scope. Right. I mean, you only have so many seats. So
do you remember the scene in the Blues Brothers when they walk up to Bob's country bunker and they talk to the lady behind the desk and they're like, what kind of music do you play here, ma'am? She's like, oh, we have both kinds. And they're like, both countries, like
Oh,
country and Western.
and West. Great. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Nebraska. Okay. Well, we're running right up against, in fact, we've gone over here a minute, but I'll give everyone a quick taste here of dessert, and I'll keep this short and sweet. Early start is Head Start for in the state level for Connecticut, and the governor there just announced that they're going to add 1,000 new spaces. My quick talking points are on this that we've been sold a bill of goods here, and we're telling ourselves a story that we want to hear with the data that comes out of early childhood education programs. Having said that, I don't want to discount the value that it provides to families, but I believe that by and large, with exceptions to be sure, because we're talking about averages here, but by and large, early childhood education programs are actually daycare, and they are child care programs. That's what they amount to when you zoom out and then look at long-term effects of these programs. So is there value for families? Of course, yes, especially for family homes that have two working parents. They need these programs. But I just want to be clear that programs like this are, I think, the result of us, again, telling ourselves a story that we want to hear rather than looking at the cold, hard facts. Any thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, a few years ago, some very negative random assignment studies started to find not positive things about preschool, but actually like statistically significant negative findings, especially on sort of social measures. And
Are you talking about Tennessee?
no, well, maybe. Yeah, I can't remember where the studies were done, but like there's always this kind of like hide the cheese kind of thing that goes on with these things. I think like members of Congress had to like, basically use their subpoena power to get them released or something, right? There are a lot of advocates of preschool for a lot of different reasons. There's some people in that community that make very expansive claims about, you put $1 in, you get 5,000 out or whatever, and
yeah, that's right.
I think the actual evidence is not so sanguine. It's something that we ought to be able to like examine the evidence on honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's popular, but the data doesn't tell the story that.
Yeah, and it's at its worst when it's presented as a solution for the problems of K-12, right?
Right.
Because the K-12 system in the United States is broken, right? It's fundamentally broken. And you can see that, for instance, in the international results where, American elementary students score kind of okayish. And then our middle school students are further behind. And then our high school students are way down the list, right?
Yeah.
So it's like what you don't do to that system is say, okay, I got a broken K-12 system. So let me put an extra year on it and that'll fix everything. Right. The real question is why aren't our students learning anything in K-12? Well, not anything, but you know what I mean? Like, why aren't they learning in K-12? Why do they keep falling down the rankings? Why do students in countries like Estonia that spend like half as much per pupil as we do, like absolutely clean our clocks in the high school, right, level? And, that should be the focus, of if, presenting pre-K as a solution to the broken K-12 system is just fundamentally dishonest in my view.
Yeah, it's not it. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks, Matt, for jumping on, and we'll hope to see everyone again next week.
Good deal. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.